Trump today renewed his threat to fire and prosecute Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. So you're not going to drop the probe?
No, I'm not playing. I have to find out.
And he said he's not leaving if,
Well, then I'll have to fire him, okay? If he's not leaving on time, I've held back firing him. I've wanted to fire him, but I hate to be controversial.
Okay. Remember, a federal judge has already quashed subpoenas against Powell and the DOJ's probe into renovation costs of the Federal Reserve headquarters. But that didn't stop two prosecutors from the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office from showing up at the building yesterday unannounced. They were led by U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro, who to check on the status of the renovations, but they were turned away. Now, Pirro says it's her job to review it. But the attorney for the Fed Board of Governors, Robert Hur, fired back an email viewed by the AP, writing, quote, "Should you wish to challenge that finding, the courts provide an avenue for you. It is not appropriate for you to try to circumvent it." I want to bring in former federal prosecutor Mike Gordon, who was fired by former AG Pam Bondi for working on January 6th cases, and Scott McFarlane, chief Washington correspondent for Midas Touch Network. Good to see both of you. I mean, Mike, first of all, I've been in that office. I've been a prosecutor in that office. I'm asking almost rhetorically, but is it standard operating procedure for the DOJ to make an unannounced visit like they did at the Federal Reserve?
Oh, absolutely not, Laura. You know that as well as I do. There's nothing about this that is standard operating procedure. In fact, I've never heard of prosecutors doing anything like this, and it's not smart to do it. Because anything that they learn, the prosecutors then turn themselves into witnesses. That's why every prosecutor knows that when you're trying to do an investigation, you don't go do it yourself. You send FBI agents or other law enforcement agents out to do the investigation so that whatever they discover, they can then testify to that.
An important point. We've got the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. He defended Trump's influence on the DOJ. Listen to this.
I know that there's this idea that President Trump has some sort of outsized control because of things that he says, but that's absolutely his right and his duty to do that. And it's the same thing that every president has and should have done.
Not accurate. Tell me what you think.
A couple problems there for Todd Blanche and for the president. First of all, yes, the president has a right to make arguments, but the Department of Justice's biggest currency is its credibility when it goes into the courtroom. So, if they're viewed as a political actor, you know who's going to get wind of that? The jurors who hear cases. And if
The whole defense bar as well.
And if they want to bring a case against Jerome Powell, there's another hurdle to get through. They have to get through grand jurors who have to sign off on this indictment. And though the Department of Justice is rarely stopped by grand jurors, they sure have been a lot in this administration. Grand jurors have tossed back cases against Letitia James. They tossed back this bonkers idea of prosecuting 6 Democrats for recording a video telling service members not to follow unlawful orders. And they threw back the case of the guy who threw the sandwich at the federal agent. Grand jurors take the job seriously. And if you're viewed as political, that's a big problem for the agency.
Mike, meanwhile, we are learning the DOJ is moving to vacate the convictions of seditious conspiracy against several Oath Keepers and Proud Boys for planning the siege of the Capitol. Mike, you worked on January 6 cases. What message does this send to the prosecutors in the department? By the way, you secured, in this case, the prosecutors secured convictions in these cases as well after many, many days in trial and months and months of actually preparing for trial. What message does this send to prosecutors to try to roll this back?
Yeah, Laura, the contrast between what's happening in the Powell case and these January 6th vacators is really striking. Because in the Powell case, a judge has already rejected grand jury subpoenas, the starting point of an investigation, which is an extraordinary thing that never happens, because the judges said the DOJ has no good faith basis to pursue an investigation. Contrast that with these January 6th vacators, where these are the 12 worst of the worst. These are the people who were convicted of seditious conspiracy, a crime that's essentially akin to treason. And they weren't still in jail. They'd already had their sentences commuted. So these are folks who are at home And DOJ has taken the step to try to erase the last black mark from their names because of their engaging in treason. What this says to DOJ, prosecutors, to the nation, is that there is no crime, not even seditious conspiracy, that will be erased from your.
I lost you, so I was like, I want to go to you.
That is
I think I heard the rest of your point, and it's a good one. Scott, I want to go back to you because the Washington Post reports Janine Pirro wrote in a court filing that, quote, the United States has determined in its prosecutorial discretion that dismissal of this criminal case is in the interests of justice. They do have great discretion in terms of what they're able to do and bring and not bring. They'd already secured convictions, I should add, and sentencing as well. Is a judge going to go along with this move?
Pretty much clears the record of the remaining people whose records aren't fully cleared by the pardon. It's hard to imagine an unopposed motion like this one being stopped by a judge. But two things jump out at me. First of all, are we to pretend we didn't just watch all that on television on January 6th? Did we not all see what happened at the Capitol? These vacating of convictions, these pardons, are communicating to the American people, do not believe your lying eyes. We saw it. It's also uniquely re-traumatizing to the victims. 140 plus police officers were injured that day. Their families watched it on TV too. They have a difficult time watching all this unfold. Pardons and with vacated convictions. And Mike Gordon didn't just prosecute January 6 cases. He did so masterfully. So did his colleagues. The jurors of the District of Columbia said these people were guilty.
Mike, Scott, thank you so much. President Trump's effort